Hi everyone! In this lecture, I want to start chapter 9, which is the last chapter of this class. And in this chapter, I'm going to talk about indirect and indexed addressing mode. We have three different types of addressing. The first one is direct, the second one is indirect, and then the last one is indexed addressing mode. All the addressing that you learned in previous chapters and you use them in your programming are direct addressing mode. So you're directly addressing to the data that you want to use in your program. So this addressing mode means how we are addressing to the data, or in another word, how we are providing the address for the PLC processor to figure out which location in memory it should search. Now, in order to understand different addressing mode, it is important to understand the definition of data, operand, and addressing mode. Okay, what is data? Data is the numerical value that we use for our computation, and then we save this data somewhere in memory. We have operand, and operand is the symbol in an instruction which is pointing to the location of the data that we want to use for our program. And addressing mode describes the relationship between this operand and the data. Let's start with direct addressing mode. In direct addressing mode, whenever you need a particular data, then you provide the address to that data directly. So the address that you provide on top of your instruction, so let's assume that this is your instruction, and the address that you provide on top of your instruction points directly to the address that contains the data. For example, in a general memory structure, let's assume that in the first column we have the memory address, and the second column is showing us the data that is stored in that particular address. Now, if I want to address, for example, to this 345, then direct addressing means that I have to provide this address of 2112. So it's the most common way of addressing. So whatever you learned in previous chapters and then you use it as addressing format for your programs is basically direct addressing. Now let's go to indirect addressing. Here in this table, I can show you how the indirect addressing mode looks like. So in an indirect address, I want to address to a particular data, and let's assume that the data I want to address is this one. So this is my data, and the direct address of this data is 345. So 345 is my direct address. Now, indirect addressing means that I'm going to address to a memory location in which the address of my data is there. So if I use this address, then this address is showing me part of memory which has the direct address of my data. So the data in this address is the direct address of my memory. So then after finding my direct address, I can go in the table again and I can find my data value, which is 633. Let me show you another example for direct and indirect addressing. So I'm going to start with drawing a memory table. Okay, in this table, in the first column, I have the address, and in second column, I have my data value. Now let's assume that the data that I'm looking for is this particular data. So my data is equal to 78. This is the data that I want to use in my program. Now, if I want to go with direct addressing, then the direct address that I need to provide is 81. So my direct address is going to be 81. Now, I can also use indirect address here as well. In indirect addressing, I can provide my address to be equal to 3. So if I say that my indirect address is equal to 3, then it means that at this address, I have the direct address of my data stored. So it means that what I have as data in front of this indirect address is my direct address of my desired data. So then after finding this particular direct address, I can come here, and then I know my data is equal to 78. So this green path is showing you how the indirect addressing mode works. So in an indirect addressing, you provide the address that has the direct address as data, and then when you get that data, which is the direct address, you can use that direct address and you can find your desired data. Now let's go to index addressing mode. In index addressing mode, you are referring to a memory location with an address which is equal to your original memory address plus an index register. So this is how your address is. Your address is going to be equal to your original memory address plus the index register. And this index value or this index register basically provides you an offset that you need to add to your original address. Now, the question is that where you can save this offset, where you can save your index register. Your index register in SLC 5 and PLC 500 will be saved in, I'm going to write it here, it will be saved in S:24. This is the address that your index register of your indexed addressing mode will be saved. So you can load whatever index register that you need or whatever offset that you need in this particular address, and whenever you start using index addressing mode, then the PLC program knows by default that the index register is saved in this particular location in your memory. Now, why we need to use index addressing and indirect addressing? These two approaches of addressing helps us to use the variable addressing method. Variable addressing method is very useful because you can use a different pointer for your scanner, and it helps you in a lot of different programs